Today is Monday, May 2nd, and this is Chapter 6. I am going to be talking today about the Barksdales, a family that lived nearby at 5214 James and who became like a second family to me. I don't recall exactly when I first met Boxy Barksdale. Norval Palmer Barksdale III was his formal name, named after his father, Norval Palmer Barksdale II, and his grandfather, Norval Palmer Barksdale, who was a noted professor, college professor. But Boxy and I probably met when he was a wrestler for Patrick Henry and I was wrestling at De La Salle, and we realized that we were neighbors. But regardless of how we met exactly, we became close friends over the years, actually best of friends. And for me, Boxy was the person who introduced me in large part to the African American community in Minneapolis and even in St. Paul. He was just someone who really opened my eyes and my heart in a lot of ways to things that I didn't fully understand. And he invited me into his family, and his family became like a second family to me. So as the story begins, I remember coming over to his house, I think for the first time, and meeting his dad. And his dad was like a little fire plug. He was a postal letter carrier, but had been a boxer, I think, in his earlier years, and he immediately started throwing punches at me in a playful way and kind of challenging me to see if I knew how to box. After I took a few quick slaps to the face, I realized I wasn't going to have much success because he had very quick hands and he knew what he was doing, but what I knew about was wrestling, so I quickly put a hold on him and threw him on the couch, and we both got up laughing uproariously about that. Boxy's mother, Wanda, was absolutely a wonderful woman, still is, and she sort of adopted me as her son in a lot of ways. And Boxy had a younger sister, Linda, whom I worked with at the communication center, and another younger sister, Kathy, and a younger brother, David, who became very good friends with my younger brothers, Tom, and Jim. And then he had another younger sister who was mentally challenged and ended up in a hospital and died at an early age. But the Barksdales were something very special to me, and I remember some stories about the encounters that we had, particularly in the early years, going over to their house during the Christmas holidays. And I often took my brother Pat with me because Pat also enjoyed the company of the Barksdales, and Pat always enjoyed good food and good drink, and that was a place where he could get both, and also good music. So I remember, I think the first time Pat and I went over was a time when we had a wonderful meal. Wanda was always cooking around the holidays, and she would always feed us very well, and Norval was free with bringing out the bottles of liquor, and Pat, who was drinking heavily at the time, was happy to share drinks with Norval. But it was also just kind of a crazy time. I mean, Pat would, and one of the more hilarious instances when we were there. Pat actually did a headstand, and everyone got a big charge out of that because he's a former gymnast, and he could do that for quite some time. And then we also brought over one of Pat's friends, someone named Bruce Axel. Bruce was a big guy, not an athlete exactly, but was a very funny guy with a great laugh, and a guy who looked a little bit like a pro wrestler at the time, a pro wrestler named the Crusher. And it turned out that at that time there was a popular song on the radio called The Crusher, and the Barksdales had a great time asking Bruce if he would sing that song, which he obliged them by doing. He immediately became labeled forevermore by the Barksdales as the Crusher, even though I'm sure they remembered his first name was Bruce. But one of my earliest memories at Christmas time being at the Barksdales, and it might have been a time when Pat was there or not there, was centered on food. Mrs. Barksdale always had wonderful aromas coming out of the kitchen, but I happen to remember at a particular time that there was a rather strange aroma coming out of the kitchen, one that I couldn't identify as being ham or turkey or any of the other wonderful things she cooked, like collard greens or black-eyed peas or barbecued ribs or anything, turkey or ham or anything like that. And she looked at me and she saw the look on my face and she just started laughing, and she said, "I suppose you're wondering what you're smelling." And I said, "Yes, I am. It's different." And to tell you the truth, it smelled like she was cooking old tennis shoes. But she introduced me to a delicacy called chitlins, something I'd never had before and didn't know anything about. Explained to me what they were and how they were prepared and how long it took to clean them. And so later on that day we had some chitlins along with some sweet potatoes and some macaroni and cheese and some coleslaw, and a wonderful dinner. And I found that at first I really didn't care too much for the chitlins, but I decided I'd give them a try, and I put some hot sauce on them, and they became something that over time I really came to like, and something that was always part of the holiday meal at the Barksdales. I remember